So I came across something that Paul Merson said. Paul Merson, the former Arsenal player, Paul Merson, he called Manchester City a one-man team. That Manchester City are a one-man team. That without Erling Haaland, that Manchester City are going to struggle to qualify for the Champions League. That Manchester City will be struggling for the top four. I feel like someone like Paul Merson and his likes, the likes of Jamie Carragher and the rest, they don't still know who Pep Guardiola is. They are still not acquainted with Pep Guardiola's game. All right. So calling Manchester City a one-man team, that if you remove Haaland, first of all, you cannot remove Erling Haaland. Erling Haaland is a Manchester City player. So some are already saying, tongues are already wagging that if Haaland gets injured, that Manchester City are going to struggle. They are not going to struggle. If you said they are going to struggle, unless you don't know who Pep Guardiola is as a manager. Pep Guardiola didn't start his coaching career at Manchester City. Pep Guardiola is not a baby coach that builds his team around one man. All right. If you know Pep Guardiola, the only manager, let me refresh your mind on who Pep Guardiola is and some of the things he has done in the Premier League, in case you've forgotten, Paul Merson, in case you've forgotten and your likes. Pep Guardiola, in the history of the Premier League, the team in the history of the Premier League that scored the most goals in a single season, that team is Manchester City under Pep Guardiola. Pep Guardiola scored the most goals with his Manchester City side. His Manchester City side scored the most goals in the history of the Premier League. In the 2017-2018 season, 106 goals. All right, go back and watch that team. That team played with a first nine. They played with first nine. They didn't play with an out-and-out striker, and they scored 106 goals. That is who Pep Guardiola is. That is how tactical of a genius he could be. That team as well scored the highest number of points in the history of the Premier League, over 102 points in the history of the Premier League. There is no team in the history of the Premier League that have scored more than 102 points, except that Manchester City side. That is Pep Guardiola without a striker, without an out-and-out striker. So that is the manager you are saying that has built his team around one man. He cannot build his. I know Pep Guardiola is. If there's one manager that works with what is at his disposal, that manager is Pep Guardiola. If there is one manager that is tactically flexible, that manager is Pep Guardiola. Pep is just doing. He's simply doing it. He's simply adapting to the strength of the players he has. If you have a striker in Erling Haaland, you would play to his strength. That's what they are doing. So that's why it seems like Manchester City are dependent on Erling Haaland for goals. It's not a bad thing to depend on a striker that could give you 100 goals. It's not a bad thing to depend on a striker that scores in, week out, game out.